So Verstappen's on pole from the two Mercedes and then Perez. It's a 2v2 out front, and really the Mercedes duo, I think, know that strategy is going to be important. They opted for a different tyre and they start line astern. So it's always important at this point to be the lead Mercedes in this instance, to be the lead car of your team, because then you're probably going to get a bit of priority on the strategy. And that is why I think we see quite a decisive move at the start from Lewis Hamilton. They get away fairly evenly. Verstappen covers the inside. He knows the slipstream is going to be a factor because it's such a long run to the first corner. Perez charging towards Hamilton with his high top-end speed. And then coming into the first corner, Russell's actually coming alongside Verstappen at this point, but he's on medium tyres. Verstappen is on the soft tyres, so there's probably going to be little that George can do at this stage. He backs off. And at this point, it looks fairly safe for second place. Perez sweeping around the outside of Hamilton. But Hamilton, through these first corners, is very good. Manages to brake early. It's very easy at this point to go in too deep on the brakes. And especially with a bit of dirty air, lock up and tag someone on the outside. But Hamilton brakes early, positions his car. And then at this point, manages to get the run on Russell through the outside of turn 2. It's a tricky corner, this one, because it seems like the important part, which is the case all the way through the weekend for the whole rest of the weekend, is this part here. Turn 3, you want to be straightened and punch out of turn 3 to get down towards turn 4. And that's what Russell is predominantly focused on coming into this corner here. So he's thinking, yes, there's Hamilton there, but if I just come through the left-hander, then I've got the line coming through towards turn 3 to maybe attack Verstappen, but also hold my place. But Hamilton just compromises turn 3 completely, goes around the outside of his teammate. From this position, he's going to get a horrible run out of turn 3 here, this final right-hander, but he's crucially got the inside for it, and there's nothing that Russell can do to hang on. So caught slightly napping, and then fighting very fairly as well, the two Mercedes, space given on both sides. Russell then runs slightly wide, and that is what allows Perez to come through on the run up to turn 4. Checo gets alongside George, and actually the straight line speed is fairly similar on this run. George has a bit of a tow from Lewis ahead. And then it's good on the brakes from Perez. Soft tyres probably helping out in that instance, and that allowed him to get up into third place. And that really cost George Russell in this Grand Prix, because his pace was very similar to Lewis Hamilton, maybe even slightly quicker at times, but stuck behind Checo in the first stint. The gap just extended, and then, again, with that strategy, Mercedes were on the same, and Hamilton just had the upper hand the whole way through. On board with Perez, and we can see the start quite well from this view. Checo had a great view of the two Mercedes scrapping. Goes to the outside. Actually, he had good overspeed at this point, Checo, but with the slipstream then that everyone else was having, just tucked in behind Max, couldn't do anything. And this is the point here where it's very easy for Hamilton to get suckered into braking too late with Russell on the outside and thinking, I need to try and pass my teammate here. That's the way to have an incident, really, when you lock up in the dirty air. So he brakes early, and that looks like it gives Perez the chance around the outside. It's all very fair, good racing from the three of them. And now Hamilton manages to come in, gives plenty of space on the apex for George. A little bit less space on the exit, but it's just that moment there where Russell goes over the curbs, loses a bit of traction, and now Perez is gunning for him and takes third place. It was a really important move, that, in the grand scheme of the race, because it just stopped Mercedes being there, second and third behind Verstappen. And it got Perez into the mix as well to be maybe a bit of a thorn in Hamilton's side.
Sergio Perez up into third place from the start. Russell dropping back a couple of places. It's Verstappen versus Hamilton as through the S's section we go now.
So then it was a race of strategy, ultimately. Verstappen on the softs, Hamilton on the mediums, and Hamilton was looking quick on that set of mediums in the first stint, pressuring Verstappen, and then eventually Red Bull had to pit. They were starting to get caught. It was becoming a little bit sketchy for track position, and they pitted. First of all, Perez pitted. A slow stop, again for Red Bull, 2 races in a row, and that allowed Hamilton a little bit of breathing space to decide what he wanted to do on strategy, because there was no immediate undercut threat. So that was a problem for Red Bull. Then they pitted Verstappen, and it was a bit of a wait-and-see game for Mercedes. What would they do? And in the end, they chose the hard tyre, which didn't work. Now, looking at the rest of the race, Daniel Ricciardo had a flyer on the soft tyre, and he was in the same strategy boat as the Mercedes. Started on the medium, could have gone to the hard, like many others did in the top 10, or he could have gone to the soft. And there was good communication between Daniel and his engineer, and they went for the soft, and it worked beautifully. Ricciardo was flying through at the end. And so the question is, what would happen if Mercedes had done the same thing? Now, Ricciardo found about 20 seconds to Lando Norris from being about 5 seconds behind him, just under 5 seconds behind him as Norris pitted on the same tyre. Norris went to the hard, Ricciardo went to the soft, and by the end, Ricciardo had 12 seconds on Ocon and about 15 seconds on Norris. So he had about 20-second gain on Lando just by being on the soft tyre instead of the hard, it seemed. This is what we simulate would have happened if the two Mercedes had gone on to their soft tyres and done the Ricciardo strategy instead of the strategy they did, going on to the hard tyres. And in the yellow, you can see Lewis Hamilton still coming up short, but significantly ahead of where he was in the actual race there. Hamilton v Hamilton. And then you've got Russell, who will take it from there because he pitted, but also would have gained a significant amount by doing the soft tyre run. The caveat is they would have had to come past Sergio Perez. In this phase here, Perez would be ahead of both Russell and Hamilton. But Russell would have gained, would have maybe got on the podium if he'd gone for the soft tyre, and Hamilton would have had a better charge towards Max Verstappen. Now, it's not the full 20 seconds we've got simulated that Ricciardo found over Norris, and part of that is because Ricciardo was flying. He was a bit of an outlier on the soft tyre, but also Norris was in traffic, which Verstappen wasn't. So Ricciardo was able to make the passes, get through the traffic, and use the pace of the soft tyre against Norris, who was held back in a bit of traffic on the hards. Verstappen was out front, cruising on his mediums, just nursing them. Maybe it would have made him push on a little bit more. Maybe he would have found a bit of deg that Mercedes were so hoping on their hard tyres. But in the end, most likely Verstappen would still hold off, but it would have been a much tighter fight.
He's been absolutely brilliant. Max Verstappen, a couple more corners to go. This has been one of his more easier victories of the season. And for the second year running, it is victory here in Mexico City for Max Verstappen.
That is mission accomplished, Max, and a very, very special number 14. Fantastic.
Amazing, guys. What a fantastic race again. 14 wins. Unbelievable. What a season.
So that was a look at the start and the Mercedes race strategy, but there was more action further back in the Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo on a charge, Pierre Gasly accumulating some penalty points, and Valtteri Bottas, hero on a Saturday, clinging on to a point on Sunday. Check it out on F1 TV.